Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Central Time, and it normally goes for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. I am still over at my friend's house. So I'm broadcasting from her living room couch. And it is really warm here. Oh my gosh, it's 85 degrees inside. So it's sweltering. So how is everybody doing? Anne, welcome. Linda, welcome. Tanitria, welcome. Little Miss Charm Maker, hello, hello. Oh, I need to get like a hair clip or something for my hair. It is so hot in here, oh my gosh. Yeah, thanks. Free from Narc Abuse says, hey, Dana, happy 4th of July early. Yeah, you too. Are you guys doing anything fun for 4th of July or anybody? I guess I maybe should ask, is anybody else binge watching season 3 of Stranger Things for 4th of July? Like me, that's what I'll be doing. Yeah, Julia says, put on the AC for self-care and a fan. Are you dog sitting? I am dog sitting, and there is no AC over here, and there is no fan. There's like a window unit in the bedroom, but if I were to go in there, you wouldn't be able to hear me because it's loud, you know? So I've got some windows open. Hopefully it'll cool down here in a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty miserable in here right now. Let's see. Oh, good for you. Bounce Back says going home or staying home and organizing for the 4th of July. That sounds like a very productive 4th. And Little Miss Charmmaker says, I'm doing good. I've been having terrible anxiety, but a good friend of mine really helped me out and sent me some good songs to help. Yeah, it's amazing the power of music, isn't it? Like when we're in a certain mood, the power that it has to be able to kind of pull us out of it. It's so cool. Let's see here. Oh, that's a good idea. Karen says, Dana, you can put your feet into cold water. Yeah, that might be plan A. Here in a little bit. It's really warm in here. How hi, Rob? Yeah, he says, oh no, from the cold and fever to the heat. Yes, misery. Oh, cool. Free from Narc Abuse says, I joined a ladies meetup group. I just moved here from Ohio 6 weeks ago. So much happier. I needed to move away from my ex. That's great. That's great. Are you meeting some nice people? Midwest. Oh, wait. I just moved here from Ohio. I'm not sure where here is, and I'm not sure that you want to say, but I was going to say if you're still in the Midwest, yeah, people out here tend to be pretty friendly, which I think is great. But Linda says, do you feel that narcissists are irresponsible with money? Well, it's not uncommon for them to be irresponsible with money. I mean, it's, their driving force is it's all about them all of the time, and they feel entitled and justified to do whatever they want. So they often feel entitled and justified to spend however much money they want in whatever way, and they just expect other people to be okay with it. So yeah, not uncommon. And they're also generally impulsive. So not uncommon for them to have, you know, a trail of financial terror that's left behind them. Hello, Agatha. Oh, that's another good idea. Nicole says, Dana, see if you can find a squirt bottle and fill it with ice water. Yeah, that is a really great idea. I think I'm going to go do that. Joanna asks, hey, Dana, I was wondering about something. We use these unofficial terms such as love bombing, hoovering, etc. Where did these terms come from, and why aren't they official terms that professionals recognize? That's a great question. Love bombing, as far as I am aware of, that term originated having to do with cults. So I think that started out as more of a like a psychological term. Hoovering, I'm not sure who came up with that. I know, oh, I forget her name. There's a gal who has a website who I've spoken with, who was the one that came up with the term gray rock. So yeah, a lot of this stuff, it's just kind of vocabulary that's developed over time. It's interesting because the survivor community, the understanding of abuse in the survivor community is very different than the understanding of abuse within like the mental health within the mental health community. And I've been a part of both for quite a while now, and I will say that the survivor community has a much more accurate understanding of it. The mental health community still uses kind of the old power and control wheel with and I forget, there's the stages of an abusive relationship, like the honeymoon phase. It has the honeymoon phase, like the tension building phase, explosion, reconciliation wheel. I personally don't like that because it doesn't always happen that way. And it also kind of implies that there is this buildup of tension, and that almost implies that there's tension between both people. And that's generally not the case. You know, it's about power and control. It's not about, an anger issue with them, or I should say anger within the relationship kind of a thing. Whereas survivor community tends to use the cycle of abuse that goes idealize, devalue, discard, which again, I think is significantly more accurate because that's how it tends to go. And yeah, why professionals don't necessarily realize all of this, there's just a lot of education that needs to be done. I can't even begin to tell you how misidentified, like forget the terminology and all this, just how misidentified abuse in general is. So I had a client today who was telling me that she came in because she said that she had an anger issue. And she's telling me about her anger issue, and she had been seeing a therapist who basically was treating it like, oh, she has irrational thinking. And really, within 20 minutes of talking to her, realizing, oh, this woman's been in a pattern of relationships, like 3 relationships, and she's young, she's early 20s, with 3 different men, all of which who have had crazy making and perpetually confusing, like squirrely behavior. And so then it would just, she wasn't getting clarity. She was constantly getting invalidated, and her concerns were being minimized. They would make it seem like she's the one with the issue, that she's jealous and paranoid and all this stuff. And of course, they're all cheating on her. And so then it would get to this point where she couldn't handle it anymore, but she wasn't getting the reassurance from them. And then she'd explode. And so she'd spent a year in therapy working on her quote unquote anger issue, when really the issue is she's around toxic people and that weren't emotionally safe. It wasn't an anger issue. It was more of a kind of she needed to examine her deal breakers and kind of boundary issues and just general awareness of this kind of stuff issues. So yeah, it's the level of awareness with this is scary, or the lack of awareness with this stuff is scary. Yeah, and Nail says, I just stopped talking about it with people who haven't been through it. I felt like it did more harm than good. Yep, I agree. It's it just kind of opens a person up for further invalidation, and they just don't get it. That was another thing. Actually, I had 3 clients today, and they 2 of them were struggling with the same thing, just being in relationships with really narcissistic people. And the first gal was saying her friends other people around her just kept justifying his behavior, telling her, oh, well, it's okay. He has female friends, and, you're being controlling and you're being jealous and this, that, and the other. And even though he'd had a sexual history with all of them and was kind of hiding their relationship and wouldn't answer his phone if they called, if she was there, and they didn't know about her and this, that, and the other. And it was like, no, of course you're gonna be insecure by that. Any reasonable person would be and should be. So, but her friends were focusing on, oh, well, he has friends and you should just let him see his friends because you don't have concrete proof. I think that's what it was, because you don't have concrete proof that he's cheating. So therefore you have to assume he's not cheating and somehow just swallow all of the hurt feelings and insecurities you have. So that kind of stuff, like just the minimization by other people around us, it's so infuriating. It's just so infuriating how this stuff flies under the radar for so many people. Belle of Amherst says, Dana, I can probably get this info somewhere, but it's easier to ask. What is your book this month for book club, and when is the next meeting? Great question. Let me check my calendar and I will tell you. It is the last Thursday of this month, which is July 25th at 6:30 p.m. And the book, I happen to have it right here, the book we are reading is called The Confidence Game by Maria Konnikova. It's just kind of about, I just started reading it the other day. It's about manipulation and kind of why we fall for it. Let's see here. Good for you. Free from narcissistic abuse says, oh, I went out with a textbook narcissist for a coffee meetup. It was a trip. So many red flags the first date and last. So happy I realized that it wasn't me, it was him. I have grown so much in 3.5 years. Good for you. Isn't that just so kind of rewarding in a weird way to be like, wow, yeah, that was a total train wreck. I am so glad I saw that right out of the gate. Carol says, yeah, this is what I'm dealing with at the moment. My boyfriend is in contact with all of his exes and thinks I'm overreacting and jealous. Yeah. And here, here's the thing, is it's not up to other people to decide what we should be okay with. This is where it comes down to getting grounded in our truth and and kind of holding those boundaries. So generally most people, I would say, actually not even, I would say all people who are team oriented and solutions oriented and who actually want to be in a happy, healthy relationship understand. This is a very, to me, this is a very basic tenet of being in a relationship, that especially opposite sex friends or being friends with your ex, that has the potential to cause a lot of unnecessary stress and conflict. And I think the vast majority of people understand that. And so then they have the ability to reassure their partner. So if the person truly is a friend, to be like, hey, why don't you come out with us? You need to meet this person. And then where there's not all of this secrecy surrounding it, or they're just going out alone, that they're making it part of, it's a group thing. And then if the other person, and that's, if the other person, let's say the friend is single or is obviously still interested in them or what have you, for them to realize, hey, this isn't going to work. This is going to continue causing, chaos and strife in my relationship, and then make a decision. So it's always strange to me when a person is willing to sacrifice their current relationship for a past relationship. To me, I think that speaks volumes. And, I would not be okay if I was dating somebody and they were friends with their exes. And, I would catch them texting them or, going out with them. It would be different if we all did things together and I felt more reassured that, yes, okay, whatever they had has been long over. This other person's moved on, they've moved on, there's nothing there. But oftentimes when people are friends with their exes, it's just keeping somebody on the back burner is what's going on. Yeah. Carol says, yeah, I don't get it. And that's how I see it. Yeah. And I think that's how most people who actually want to have a happy, healthy relationship see it. It's the people that are looking to keep a thing on the back burner or that are looking to cheat that don't see it that way. So, but here's the thing is to stay in that relationship, because communication isn't the issue here. So thinking to yourself, well, I'm just going to continue telling him all of my concerns and hope that one day I get through and that one day he'll, stop either spending time with them or he'll somehow reassure me. That can really be a big waste of time. So I would really encourage you to get clear on kind of where your deal breakers are with this stuff. Because here's the thing, is a lot of people will think, oh, that they're setting a boundary with this person in their life. Yes, I keep telling him, I'm not okay with this. I don't want you talking with women that you've had sex with. I don't want you going out with them. I don't, want all of this. We keep having these conversations and it just, nothing keeps getting resolved and blah, blah, blah. When really the issue here is for a boundary to be an effective one, there needs to be a consequence to it. Like there needs to be some sort of deal breaker. So to stand there and continue to defend yourself and hold your ground and kind of insist that, and to assert yourself, at a certain point, it just becomes screaming into the wind and exercise in futility. Oh yeah, absolutely. Karen says, Dana, and would the boyfriend be okay if the girl did the same? No double standards. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's not a gender thing. That's just a respect relationship thing. I think that's just common decency, right? To make your partner comfortable with situations that that have the potential to be uncomfortable. So let's see here. Let me scroll up. Oh, I just realized why I can't see. so well on my computer. Hold on. I turned down the brightness setting last night. Oh my gosh, that's so much better. Okay. Whew. Like sitting in the dark over here. Bounce Back says, I definitely hold my boundaries close now. I refuse to allow anyone to treat me less than human. I will be slamming that door. Knowledge is power. Yes. Good for you. I'll tell you too, what's interesting is oftentimes when there's kind of this progression, like this awakening or awareness when it comes to boundaries. And it's very common for example, this gal today was doing what so many of us have done in the past, where she had dated somebody who was incredibly verbally and emotionally abusive. And I was in the exact same spot. And so when I was, I was a little bit younger than her, and when that relationship had ended, telling ourselves, you know what, I'm never going to date anybody like that again. And then actually never dating anybody like that again. However, the following people were just more like covert shades of that. So their behavior was just more subtle, but it was still just as damaging. And so there's kind of this progression where you start waking up to it and you realize, oh, I thought I needed concrete proof in order to actually leave. Oh, I thought I was being unreasonable. Letting other people decide our boundaries. And, you don't. Like it's whatever, if it's not okay with you, it's not okay with you. Whatever that might be. Let's see here. Let me scroll up here. Gareth asks, how's the dog? He says, that's a long job, Dana. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Dog is good. She's prancing around, tap dancing on the wood floor as we speak. Yes, I am over here. They are out of the country. And it's me and another friend that have split up our time. So I am here until July 8th. And then our friend Joy is going to be here, I think, for another 3 or so weeks after me, maybe even longer. So, yeah. They're having a good time. I think they're absolutely melting, though. They're over in Europe right now, and they don't have any air conditioning anywhere, and it's 95 something degrees. Let's see here. Paula says, I don't understand when exes can just be friends so easily after the breakup. Don't you need time, Shirley? Well, my guess is when people can so easily be friends after a breakup, either one person still has feelings or, and is still holding on to hope, or both people lost feelings a long time ago and there's just nothing there, but they enjoyed hanging out. I think more often than not, it tends to be one person is holding on to hope and has feelings. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. I'm on my laptop, so I'm having to use the scroll bar, which is a lot more difficult than being on my desktop. Nails, you bring up a great point. He says, I think it's part of realizing that not everyone is an empath either, and it's not always easy for them to put themselves in our shoes. Yes, but I think it's also equally important for us to realize that uh, they can also just sometimes have a completely different perspective of things. I think it's very common for people to make the mistake of thinking that other people have the same morals and motivations that we do. And, that may or may not be the case. When you're dealing with somebody like a narcissist, that's not the case. Or not even necessarily a narcissist, but kind of further up that spectrum, somebody who just, well, I guess it would be on that spectrum, but like somebody who's just looking to do whatever they want to do. If they're looking to cheat, if they're looking to lie, or, some people, and that's such a weird thing for, I think, so many of us, is like when these kinds of people get married. And, we have this idea of, well, marriage involves monogamy, and marriage involves, we have this whole idea of what marriage is. And they knowingly went into getting married with no intention whatsoever of being faithful. And that's just really difficult for a person to wrap their mind around, that this person's just been cheating ever since day one. They just wanted to get married to get that person locked down for whatever reason, for money, because they wanted somebody to, do their laundry or take care of them or financially support them or whatever it was. Let's see here. Little Miss Charmmaker says, what do you think about telling someone you might start dating about your issues and about your past, to try to be upfront with them so they know why you're pulling away and constantly overthinking? Oh, I guess it depends on what kind of communication you have with that person. So if they've already proven themselves to be emotionally safe, then I would say start having that conversation a little bit. But I would also realize that doing that push pull, this is more of a you thing that needs to be resolved than something that they can necessarily, like, them knowing about it, is maybe somewhat helpful, but it's going to be more of, you've got to figure out, okay, what's going on? Is it a fear of abandonment? Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a kind of what's going on, and what do you need to do in order to feel more secure? Is it moving slower in the relationship? Is it opening up less to them? What do you need to do? Because that push pull, that's really kind of divisive behavior that a lot of people tend to be out the door with. So here's the thing too, is I wouldn't open up about all of your issues. I wouldn't launch into your whole story, because that's a lot for another person, especially if they've never even been through anything like this. And so then they might be concerned of, I guess what I'm saying is, whatever you tell them, you want to make sure that you're painting it in such a way that shows kind of lessons learned, and that this is an experience you've grown from. And I like I said, I would just really not go into the full details, because that might be, if you don't know them that well, that's something that they can use against you. If they do realize, wow, that's way more, this person's got a lot of healing to do, that's too much for me, it can cause a lot of feelings of shame and embarrassment. So, because we just don't know how they're going to react to that. So I would just start opening up slowly when you decide to do it. Let's see. Hmm. That's a good question, Gigi. I'm not really sure. She says, what is the distinction between a psychosexual evaluation and a psychiatric evaluation? I've heard of and have done psychosocial evaluations. My guess would be a psychosexual evaluation would be one that focuses on that person's um, uh, their thinking and behavior related to their sexuality. A psychiatric evaluation, there's probably a lot of overlap between the two. Uh, the term psychiatric evaluation can be kind of a vague, all-encompassing term, and it really depends on who's doing it. Psychiatric evaluation by a counselor is going to be different than one that's done by a psychiatrist. So, I would think that a personality stuff would be more kind of screened. Well, they're going to be screening for that kind of in general, based on the information they collect and based on the behavior that they're seeing, regardless of whether it's a psychiatric evaluation or a psychosocial evaluation. But if they're doing a psychosexual, if they're doing a psychosexual, then it almost sounds like they'd be focusing more on kind of disruptive sexual behavior. So oftentimes personality disordered stuff can take a while for a clinician to be comfortable with making that diagnosis. And sometimes even a lot of clinicians are really not comfortable making the diagnosis of the main purpose for a diagnosis is to drive treatment. So it's going to depend on that clinician's level of experience, that clinician's level of comfort, whether or not there's overlapping things going on that they're going to try to sort out. If this person has more of like a sexual addiction, they might want to see, okay, let's resolve the active addiction stuff first and then see what we're dealing with. Because when a person has an addiction, it's really difficult to tell with their behavior. Is it the addiction that's the cause of this, or is it deeper? Is it personality disorder? And they have an addiction on top of the personality disorder. Let's see here. Scrolling up here. Oh, bummer. Jennifer says, hello, I just got in from dealing with car issues today. Ugh, I hate cars. Yes, yeah, I do too. I hear you. I'm sorry that you're going through that. And local tourist says, cluster Bs are totally selfish, even when they are faithful to a relationship. Yeah, and I think you could even back it up and say, whenever there's that kind of imbalance present within any of us, whenever there's that imbalance present, there's going to be issues. Because everything, if we're imbalanced in a certain way, for us, right, if we're more on that overgiver side of the spectrum, all of our relationships are going to be imbalanced until we get that corrected. There's always going to be issues. And a lot of times it's going to be us being drawn to these dynamics where we're able to overgive because we kind of feel like, oh, I'm comfortable. This is how I prevent being rejected or abandoned, is I'm nice to people. I'm there for them. I'm eternally forgiving. I am ingratiating. I'm people pleasing. I keep the peace. I do all of these things. And so for us, when we're more on that over giving side of the spectrum, it's, it's just as damaging, except we're the ones that were unintentionally, but we're the ones that were damaging. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying, the opposite side of that, if you have a person who really, when there's unresolved abandonment issues at play, there's going to be attachment challenges. So it's so important that we really work on that and work towards kind of bringing our highest and best self towards any relationship in any situation, and realizing that if we're in a relationship with somebody who has some, majorly unresolved stuff like that, and it's impacting them, it's going to continue to drive their behavior. It's not as simple as them just stopping. Like, there's a reason for it. Just like it's not as simple for like a 600-pound person to put down the fork. Like, there's more going on there. So, but yeah, people that are just emotionally not available to be in a relationship, you're going to find a lot of, selfish, destructive behavior in that. Let's see, that is an interesting question. Anonymous Healer says, am I likely to experience a nervous breakdown or crash from these memories? We've been no contact with all relatives for more than 6 years. I just want to move on. Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend. I mean, emotional triggers can be a funny thing, and they're kind of difficult to predict when they're going to surface and how they're going to impact us when they do surface. But a lot of it's going to depend on, I think, the kind of, I say story, but the narrative, I guess, that we tell ourselves surrounding that event. A lot of how we feel about something is surrounded by how we perceive it. So if you can perceive it in a more empowering way of, I don't know, you'd have to give me an example of a memory, but putting up like a positive spin on it, knowing what you know now, to be like, okay, yeah, that was just confirmation that this person was toxic, that they weren't for me, that, driving forward, this is the next chapter. This is kind of somehow viewing that memory in a more empowering way can help to soften it as an emotional trigger, I guess is what I'm saying. Let's see here. Gareth says, where are your friends in Europe? And yes, it is hot here. They are in Florence, Italy right now. And my friend says was headed to the store and she was going to try to hunt down some sort of fan or a window unit because it was just sweltering there. Yeah, you're welcome, Anonymous Healer. Anonymous Healer says, thank you so much for your videos and chats. I'm eternally grateful for your calming voice and consistent support. I am hoping this continues. Yes, well, I plan on continuing these. I've been doing them, gosh, for I don't know how long now, 3+ years, pretty much every Wednesday. So Pico is here on the couch. Do you want to come say hi? She's so hot too. Gosh, we're dying. We're so hot. You want to see? Want to say hi to people? Let's see. Let me turn the camera here. See this cute dog. Oh, aren't you cute? Look at that dog. Look at that face. Yes. Oh, you could be on your own calendar. Yes, you could, because you're so very cute. Yes, you are. Let's see. Oh, wow. Marie says, Dana, I remember participating in your first live streams when I joined them. Oh, that's been a while. Yes, Rob. Rob says, oh, as an orange pico. Yeah, pico as in the tea, not pico as in the kind of Mexican, what would you call it? Like seasoning garnish, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, garnish. Carol says, I get conflicted if I'm just having emotional flashbacks or just overly sensitive, and if my boyfriend's behavior is triggering me. Well, Carol, if we're talking about if your boyfriend is friends with all of his exes and that's making you insecure and you haven't met them and he's not validating your concern and there's no effort that's being made to say, hey, I want you to meet them. Once you meet them, you'll realize it's nothing. It's not like he's, on his phone with them when you're not there. You've gone out in groups together, these kinds of things. And frankly, even still, I think it's completely reasonable and appropriate to just make that a new rule of like, you know what? I don't do that. Like, I don't date people that are still actively friends with their ex. Because it's just, I don't like feeling jealous and insecure. I want a person that is at a place in their life where they value their relationship over friendships that make me uncomfortable. That's completely fine if that's not okay with you. I think the vast majority of people out there, I would say, that's a given. And most people understand, hey, if I'm like, for example, I have, here's an example. I had a guy friend for a long time, for close to 20 years, that I had dated when I was in high school. I had broken up with him. We had remained acquaintances. And then I had gotten married, and then he had gotten married. And him and his wife were on a road trip. And anyways, they came and stayed with us for a night. And the next day we went out for breakfast, and it was so incredibly uncomfortable, and his behavior was just inappropriate. And I just realized this is making me uncomfortable, and this has the potential to be an issue in my marriage and within their marriage. And even though he didn't have a problem with it, I did. And so that friendship is no more, because it was, it just wasn't working. So, again, like, if your boyfriend is doing a bunch of things that you're not okay with, but you're trying to convince yourself that you're okay with them, this is not you being overly sensitive. This is you trying to push down your feelings and convince yourself that you're okay with things that you're actually not okay with. And his behavior, if he's hanging out with a bunch of his exes and stuff like that, and he's, telling you that you're, minimizing your concerns, it's appropriate to be upset by that. Yeah, Carol says, I worry that he's maybe secretive at times, and I was warned by one of his exes that he's very close to his first wife. Well, I think at this point, Carol, you're going to have to figure out where's your line in the sand with this, because if it's And I think it's reasonable. I think a lot of people would have an issue with that. It's a very valid issue. I would have an issue with that. So, um, one of the things we've talked about before is really tightening up our standards when it comes to things, and realizing for so many people, their standards and consequently their deal breaker tends to be, you know what, I would leave if this person ever cheated on me or if they ever hit me. But the problem is they wait for concrete proof that they're actually being cheated on or they're being hit. And when we've waited that long, we've waited too long. Because there's so much before that precedes all of that. And so, I've talked about it before on this live stream. If we can back things up and tighten things up as far as our standards go, to be like, you know what? I don't do perpetual confusion. I don't do crazy making. I don't do anything that is a drain on, that's just sucking me down and just sucking my energy. Like I can't do this. It's just, that's not healthy. So it doesn't need to be so extreme of cheating or hitting. It can simply be, I can't do this. It's emotionally exhausting to always be questioning and wondering and suspicious, and there's no resolution, there's no answer. So there's a lot to be said for and Carol too. Carol was saying, I think that's what I was doing. I was looking for proof, and yes, it's exhausting. If if we can back things up a little bit and look at it in terms of putting this issue aside and thinking, is this an emotionally safe person? And what I mean by that is, is there honesty? Is there trust? Is there, solid communication? Is there respect for your feelings? Are you able to talk things out? Or is it like talking to a brick wall where everything's minimized, it's spun around? You just need to get over it. You just need to deal with it. Because because it's really difficult to feel emotionally safe with an emotionally unsafe person. That's why. But unfortunately, we often try to convince ourselves, oh, we're just being overly sensitive. Like, no, you're not being overly sensitive. You're with an emotionally unsafe person. And until they change their behavior, right? And they're able to actually have appropriate behavior and validate you, it's going to continue to feel emotionally unsafe for you. So it's not an issue. The issue that you have isn't with you being overly sensitive. It's with you not wanting to acknowledge that this problem is as big of a problem as it is. That's the issue. Sarah says, if my current living situation is abusive and I can't leave due to health issues, any advice on how to cope? Yes. So I would say trying to carve out as much peace as you possibly can in your life in whatever ways that you can. So maybe that means, I don't know what all your health issues involve, but if you're able to, well, at a minimum, there's relaxation and meditation videos and such on YouTube. So listening to those, that's something that's free and easy to do. So listening to those as often as you can, either throughout the day or before you go to bed at night. Just tripling up on your self-care, as much, whatever that might mean across the board. Really eating nourishing foods, watching, if you're gonna, I don't know, reading some good books, taking care of yourself, allowing yourself, kind of a luxurious shower or bath, or time to veg out in front of the TV with, a good show or whatever that might mean. Let's see. Carol says, well, we do talk, but it goes back to me accepting it no matter how I feel. Right. And that's the thing with so many of us is we don't want to leave. We just want them to change, but they don't want to change. And so then we're at this impasse of, well, I guess if I'm not going to leave, then I'm going to have to somehow become okay with their behavior because that's the only other option. If that's the choice, right? If we're not leaving, then the only other choice is to learn how to endure and suffer, or yeah, basically, I guess that's the choice. If we're not going to leave, then how do we get comfortable with staying? But that's the challenge, is getting quote unquote comfortable with staying. It involves that mental anguish is going to continue to grow, because deep down inside, we know that this is crossing a boundary for us, and we're trying to convince ourselves that it's not. Yeah, Life After Narcissist says, yeah, that is smart. If you are always confused, that is a sign. There is a big problem here. Yeah, and we don't even need to figure out what the confusion is about. That I can't even begin to describe, like, what a game changer that can be. It's not normal to feel perpetual confusion in a relationship, and it's not healthy. Like, that just sucks a person's energy, and it has kind of long-term effects. So it can be an exercise in crazy making, trying to figure out what they're really up to, and trying to get to the bottom of things, when the reality is we're probably never going to know the complete truth. But if you make that your new line in the sand of, you know what, I don't even care. Like, I don't even need to know what all is going on. All I know is I don't feel perpetual confusion around the emotionally safe people in my life. I don't feel mental anguish. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't feel insecure, jealous, any of these feelings. I feel safe because we're able to talk about things, because I know their intentions. It's just a non-issue. So it's not, I think that's another way you can tell, is it me or is it them? Do you feel this way around other people? And if you do, have those other people been emotionally unsafe? Odds are they have, in some way, shape, or form. We tend to not just feel these things for no reason. So, okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yes, and Bren is saying, talking to Carol, she says, it's not about his line, it's about your line. Your line is what needs to be followed. If he does anything you don't like, then it's not a proper relationship for you. Right. And if assertive communication can't resolve it, then you're at an impasse. Because then this is where so many of us get stuck, is we keep thinking, surely if I can just get through to them, they'll change. And no, not generally, no. I mean, if assertive communication, if a handful of assertive conversations about a topic cannot effectively resolve the issue, then they don't care. They understand how upsetting their behavior is. They understand all of this. They're just not interested in changing it. So I think we tend to tell ourselves, well, they just don't understand. And so I need to, because we know that in situations like that we're right. Like, this is inappropriate. This guy or this gal is continuing to text her ex and staying out late and doing all kinds of things that are inappropriate. They need to understand that what they're doing is not okay. And so then I'm going to sit here And I'm going to keep telling them that that's not okay until they understand it. And that's where that frustration comes from. And this is where this is where these relationships just become like this fevered pitch of intensity, because the person who keeps thinking, I just need to communicate with them, I just need to get through to them because I'm not going to leave, that's when they start becoming or seeing personality changes within them. Like, wow, you know what? I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm cussing, I feel so full of rage. I just want to physically attack this person. This is not who I am. Like, that's a really great sign that you're in the wrong relationship if things are getting to that level, because you're not being heard. You know, that's a sign. So, yeah, knowing it's hard. It's hard to, I think, walk away, because I think for so many of us, it's sort of like, well, it's not fair. I shouldn't have to be the one to change. They're the ones with the problematic behavior. I'm just sitting here trying to have a relationship, and they're being squirrely. And even though that's the case, we have to realize if they're being squirrely, then they're not trying to have a relationship. And so us, you know, our love, understanding, forgiveness, therapy, all kinds of stuff, it's not going to work if they're not truly, sincerely interested in having a relationship. If they're just interested in having a primary partner, quote unquote partner, and a series of, you know, sleeping around with whoever else, then, you know, it's important that we see that for what it is. Hold on. Dog is getting tangled up in the computer cord here. Oh, Pico, honey, sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Gosh. When we're feeling frustration, it's because there's a huge disconnect between, well, so let's say we're feeling frustration with another person's behavior, okay? If their behavior is here, if it's at like, we'll just in case anybody's listening to this on the podcast, we'll say like on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? With 1 being the worst behavior ever and 10 being the greatest behavior ever. If their behavior is at a 3, but our expectations for their behavior is at an 8, the divide between that is the level of frustration that we're going to be feeling. And it's not, we might think it's because of their behavior, but really it's because our expectations are not matching reality. And when we can get clear about that, and that's really a painful thing to do, it takes a normal, decent person an awful long time to fully realize that other people don't have the same morals and motivations. To fully realize, oh my gosh, this person, you know, married me knowing they weren't willing to work as a team and they were going to do whatever they wanted to do. When we can see reality for what it is, their behavior is a 3, then our expectations, if we're going to restore any sanity in our life, our expectations for their behavior need to be a 3, regardless of whether or not we stay or go. Because we get into trouble when we keep thinking that their behavior is anything other than it is, especially if they haven't done, you know, even done anything to show that their behavior is anything other than it is. You know, apologizing for it is not changing. Talk of changing is not changing. Taking sporadic action towards changing is not changing. Just like if a person has a New Year's resolution, you know, talking about losing weight is not losing weight. Planning to lose weight is not losing weight. Buying gym clothes is not losing weight. Stocking up your fridge full of fresh fruits and vegetables is not losing weight. You know, losing weight only involves, you've got to put that plan into action on a regular, even going to the gym 5 times is not losing weight, right? It's got to be a lifestyle. It's got to be something that you do consistently in order to maintain it. So, let's see here. Let me scroll down. Cloud Williams asks, well, can narcissists truly love anyway? No, I don't think that that's a possibility. They have too much of an underdeveloped self. I guess it depends on how we're defining love, because I think people could argue this point. To me, when a person has an underdeveloped sense of self and instead all they have are their defense mechanisms and they're defensive and they're insecure and they're um, when it's all about them all of the time, there's no room for anybody else. So because of that, a lot of that's because of that defensiveness. It's just all about them all of the time. And in order for love, I think that they can feel more basic emotions, like more kind of primitive emotions of lust. And but there's no, just kind of more animalistic emotions, but without empathy, without a true sense of connection with another human being, that level of healthy love is just not there. There's not even the potential for it. At least, if we're talking about love, which again, I think so often we talk about love in terms of just this intense chemical feeling inside of us, right? Like this kind of unhinged neediness, but that's not love. That's fear of abandonment or desperation or lust fueled fears of abandonment. I mean, that's not love. Love is appreciation of another person. And so that it's founded on dignity and respect. It's founded on that appreciation. Sort of like if you've ever seen or known anybody that's had a classic car, they love that car. They care for it, they tend to it, they keep it in tip-top shape, they value it. And for a narcissist, they don't value other people, especially if other people have anything that they even remotely perceive as a threat. If you make more money than them, if something good happens in your life, they have a really difficult time celebrating anybody else's wins because of their own insecurity. And so there isn't that ability, there's just not that emotional availability for them to, to have that empathy and to have that connection needed for a sincere connection to be there. This is one of the reasons they can move on so quickly. That they can go like, oh, I absolutely love you, I want to marry you. And then 3 days later, they're running off with somebody else. Because it's just, they have fleeting emotions in part, because they're impulsive, but then also in part, there's no depth there. Those depths of emotions require sincerity, which often goes hand in hand with empathy and connection. Let's see. Hi, welcome, Rick. That's a good question, Jennifer. She says, well, wouldn't you say that a narcissist values, quote unquote, values someone until they get what they want and then they discard? Or would that not be considered valuing? It's not true value. It's schmoozing. It's finessing. It's finessing somebody. It can feel, that's what's so confusing, because when we're on the receiving end of that, it can feel like this person is treating us with value. Because when a person's really laying it on thick like that, and you're the center of their world, and you feel amazing, that just feels so, so good. But with them, it's not lasting. That's part of the idealized cycle with them. There was a video I saw a little while ago that had a really interesting take on love that I'd never heard before, that I really, really liked. And they had described the cycle of a relationship or of love as, how did they put it? This idealized stage, then a power struggle phase. I think maybe another term I would use to describe that is a negotiation phase. And then the third phase is like long-lasting love. And so during that power struggle phase, so that idealized stage, this is every relationship goes through some degree of this. Like this isn't, only for narcissists. It's, we go through it too. So everybody goes through it. It's when you meet somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's so amazing. There's so much about them that I've been looking for. We see all of their good qualities, right? And we think we've met this perfect person. And then as that idealization wears off and we kind of settle in and we start to see them more for who they are, that's when the reality starts setting in and we just have a more kind of grounded approach about, we just start seeing things more clearly. That power struggle, that negotiation phase, I would say even friendships, any dynamic would go through something like that. So then at that part where people start getting real is when they start, you start learning how to work as a team. There's that level of negotiation. Okay, the power struggle of who's going to do what and what are our roles in this dynamic, and how do my boundary standards and deal breakers line up with yours, these kinds of things. And so and this often isn't like a conscious thing, right? This is just something that just part of interacting with other people. Most relationships get stuck in that stage. And that's where a lot of that mental anguish and frustration and irritation come from, because they can't move past that power struggle phase. Especially if you've got somebody that, this is why when I talk about the importance of open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, that is such a core part of the foundation for a healthy relationship. Because the other person's got to be able, both people have got to be able to negotiate and compromise and assert themselves, and to be able to bring up concerns and challenges and thoughts and feelings and all of this, to be able to effectively discuss it. And if one person can't do that, or if one person's uninterested in certain things about their partner, that's when things kind of come to like a screeching halt. So I thought that was a good way to describe it, because then after that, once that the steps in that dance are figured out and people are like, okay, this is working for me, and the other partner is like, yes, this is working for me, we have this figured out, we're both getting our wants and needs met in a healthy way, that this is happening, because it feels like this relationship feels like a safe place. It feels nourishing. Then it becomes settled into that true appreciation and true value of another person, because both people at that point realize each other are emotionally safe. So I liked their perspective on that. Thank you, Malta, for the live stream donation. She says, I found your doggo on the replay. So cute. Thanks for bringing a smile to my face tonight. Oh, well, thank you. Yes, this is my friend's dog, and she is the best, just one of the best dogs ever. Ever. And I think there was another live stream donation, but I was yammering on. So, where, how do I find these things? I don't know. One of these days I'll figure out what I'm doing on YouTube. Oh, I'm so sorry. If somebody could let me know who submitted the other live stream donation, I'd appreciate it so I can acknowledge them. Yep. That's a great point, Zachary. Says, yeah, glib charm is a salesman's trait. They're trying to sell themselves. Yep, absolutely. That's, I think so many of us, we tend to think of charm as something that's positive, but it's manipulative. Like a person has, there's a difference between a person being likable and a person being charming. When a person's being charming, they're finessing, they're schmoozing, and they're not being their authentic self. When a person is being likable, they still have, when a person's being charming, they're doing a lot of mirroring. They're telling the person exactly everything that they want to hear. When a person is being likable, they're being friendly and they're being themselves, but they're still being authentic. They still have their own thoughts and opinions. They're not so overly concerned about, they're not concerned about, um, mirroring the other person and being everything the other person needs. But they're still, because they're likable, they're still able to use tact in expressing themselves. So I don't know, some maybe subtle differences, but some important differences. Let's see here. Jennifer says, is there a way to immediately know if it's schmoozing, or is it something you will come to know in time? Sometimes we can tell and sometimes we can't. Sometimes, I think at a minimum, if, I guess here's kind of my rule of thumb, is if somebody's telling me, if I find myself really taken by somebody and I just think, oh, this person's so amazing. And especially if I think they're so amazing because they think I'm so amazing, then it's time for me to take a few steps back, because they might be completely sincere and they're like, oh no, Dana, I think there's all these great qualities about you. And I really like all these things about you. They might be completely sincere, but I tend to slow things down at that point. Just time, there's just, you can tell with time. Um, some situations it's easier to see than others. Yeah, like for example, little kids, right? Little kids start buttering you up when they want something. You can, as an adult, you can see that a mile away. They'll tell you everything you want to hear, that you're their favorite and they love you so much, and they'll be on their best behavior and, blah, blah, blah. The master manipulators by the age of 6. So same like with online, if you get an online dating scammer, I think nowadays most people can see that stuff for what it is, because they do come on so strong and so fast out of the gate. So I think at a minimum, if somebody is, when anybody is in that idealized stage, whether if we have the insight for ourselves of, wow, if you're finding yourself thinking this other person is absolutely perfect, or they're just amazing, you're still in that idealized stage. And again, it's normal, it's part of any relationship, but you're not seeing that person completely accurate yet. Like, it'll take time to see the humanness of them. If they're seeing you in that way, where they think that you can just kind of do no wrong, then they're idealizing you. And I think it's healthy to realize, when either person is in that idealized stage, this is not, although it might feel like we sincerely feel this way, there's still kind of a lack of maturity within. There's not a foundation there for those feelings, I guess is what I'm saying. It'll take time. That relationship isn't mature, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, let me scroll. Yeah, it's so sad. Christine says, I have a friend with mental illness who was taken advantage of by a scammer guy on Instagram. He told her he was a movie star and she wouldn't listen to me. Yeah, it's so sad when people have kind of this added, vulnerability of mental illness or, um, whatever it might be, some sort of cognitive thing going on. It's heartbreaking because the odds that they're going to continue to get caught up with people like this is really high. So yeah, I'm so sorry about your friend. That's just terrible. Yeah, Bounce Back says, my ex, I call him the chameleon. He will change who he is to fit the people he is around to get what he wants from them. He is a master at charm, but eventually the facade falls. Yeah, it's really wild when we see that and when we realize that that's exactly what it is, that this person's a complete chameleon. I would say Jack, one of my exes, was very much like that. And I had never seen, there were so many things. It was so odd to me that I didn't see that in the relationship. And it was so odd to me that anybody could even be like that. To completely just, it's like an actor playing a role. All of you think this person has this certain set of this worldview and these morals and these values and these motivations in life. And then you find out, oh no, it was like a coat they put on and take off. It was the most crazy thing I've ever seen in my life. Let's see here. Yeah, well, that's true. Joanna says, well, charming can be to get in someone's pants, but they aren't necessarily a narcissist. Yes, I agree. Charm, just in general, is that person wants something. So I think it's a good idea to just kind of take a few steps back. Oh, I'm so warm. Agatha actually, she mailed me a fan. It was so cute, like a little paper fan. And it's at, I don't have it with me. Oh, that's nice. Let's see, Mariposa asks, Dana, were you ever married to a narcissist? No, I was not, but I had two pretty much back-to-back relationships with very sociopathic men after my marriage ended. And that's what got me started. That's kind of what kicked all of this off, was me trying to understand what happened. And then it was just pulling a string on a sweater and then connecting the dots and just seeing the bigger picture of it, that I'd had a pattern of problematic people in my life, but they all came in different shapes and forms and different dynamics and with different behavior. And so it took me a while to realize that there was any type of pattern there. So, whew. Let's see. Palmon says, I never thought people were so mean and hurtful until I met a shapeshifter. I agree. I completely agree with that. I hear ya. I felt the exact same way. I thought I knew. how cold and calloused people could be. And I had no idea until I really lived it. And then started hearing stories from just the experiences of some other people. And there is no bottom. Like there is no end to like their level of selfishness. It's just all about them all the time. And I think, again, that's the hard thing for normal, decent people is we continually we keep seeing their behavior through the lens of our own morals and motivations and mindset. And so we're just continually caught off guard. Like, oh my gosh, this person, how could they do this to their children? How could they do this to me? Why would they get married if they are planning on cheating the whole time? Or like, you know, why are they lying about this? Like, it just continues to not make sense. So yeah, it's wild. Well, thank you, Jamie, for the live stream donation. She says, this live stream has saved me so many times. Thank you, Dana. Well, you are so welcome. And I hope that you're doing better these days. I know going through this can really, it's one of the most difficult things I think a person can go through in life. It just absolutely takes every ounce of strength you have to climb out of the hole that is recovering from a person like this. Okay, hold on, let's see here. Sebastian, let me scroll up here. I'm getting bits and pieces. Of what's going on. Hold on, let me scroll up here to see if I can find where this starts here. Okay, I think I found the beginning of his situation. He says, I took a plane, I left my work and showed up at her door after a month and a half, but now she hates me. I don't understand. I feel like my soul has been violated. My girlfriend left me outside her house and called the police after I traveled 12 hours to see her. I left my job. We lived 6 months together and we are both from the same culture. And she's blocked me everywhere. So she isn't a narcissist? Let's see. If she blocked me everywhere and I cannot communicate with her, is she going to come back? I feel violated. How can I convince my girlfriend she is making an error to completely ignore me? Let's see here. I feel suicidal for 10 days now. Why is she doing this to a relationship that was so amazing? I was working during those 6 months. We have agreed to this, that I will work outside and then we will live together. Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this, Sebastian. I can imagine how shocking that would be, and out of the blue for her to do such a change like that when you thought things were going so well. You know, I don't know if she is or isn't a narcissist, but at a minimum, it sounds like there's it's at a minimum, I think it sounds like there's not the level of communication there that needs to be. I think that's best case scenario. You know, I don't know what all is going on with her, but I think, you know, this would be a sign of what to expect in the future. So I know it's incredibly difficult because you sacrificed a lot to be with this woman, and I understand. I mean, I get it. The way that you feeling violated, and even feeling to the point where you're feeling really desperate and suicidal. A lot of that is understandable, given how much you've sacrificed to be with this woman and then to be treated that way. So, but I think at the same time, realizing if this is as good as it's going to get, right? Like, this is the beginning stages of a relationship. And if she runs hot and cold like this, and there's truly nothing that you did, like this just came out of nowhere, then, you know, she might have all kinds of issues. And there isn't a thing about convincing her. Like, she has a bunch of stuff that she needs to work through in order for her to be emotionally available enough to be in a relationship with anybody. So what country, where are you in the world? I would encourage you to Google Catalonia. Okay. I would encourage you, or maybe somebody else can do it in the chat, to look up. There's often suicide hotlines that are open pretty much 24 hours a day. They're free, and they normally have them in, I don't know if I'm sure that there's some in Catalonia, but it can be a great resource to have. So when you're feeling like that, you can call and talk to somebody, or if you're feeling like you need to go be someplace safe, you know, like a hospital, or I think you don't need to suffer alone with this. I would encourage you to kind of find your support system right now. If you have friends or family, or you know, whoever, a therapist or somebody that is around you that can just help you through this. So, especially if you're feeling like you might hurt yourself. So we are here, we are here every Wednesday night at this time, 8:30 till for about 3 hours. What is that? 11:30-ish. So, it might be worth, if you're feeling isolated over there, to see if you can possibly meet with a therapist over there, or I'm not sure how they handle depression and feeling suicidal over there, but to call, to um, call the hospital and to reach out and get some help. I think so many of us have been where you are, where we just feel absolutely emotionally devastated. And I guess I just want you to know that the pain of this doesn't last forever, and it isn't always so heavy and so dark. That there's many, many of your best days are still ahead of you. So please just know that. He says, my story is so complicated, I could write a book. Yeah, and Zachary is saying, it sounds like you feel devastated right now. A counselor could be able to help you get through this. Yeah, I agree. I agree with Zachary, Sebastian. And it might even be worth it right now while you're feeling this way to see if you can go and talk to somebody a couple times a week. So this is a lot. Like you said, it's a lot, and that you could write a book. And it's, you know, it's difficult to carry that around with you alone. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Hey, Lydia asks, is he, meaning Sebastian, is Sebastian experiencing a trauma bond? Yeah, I think you could say that. The kind of, it's that unhinged neediness of, I've got to get this person back. I need them back. Everything will be fine once they come back. Even though they've hurt me so much, it's, you know, those bonds are often forged during those highs and lows. So I think that's part of it. But um, yeah, and it sounds like he's been going through stuff for 7 years. So that's definitely part of it. Those trauma bonds, when a person too is not, and when I was gonna say, when a person's not, how do I put this? When we are not grounded, I guess, in ourselves, when and nobody is until I think, really, frankly, I really don't think anybody is until they go through something like this, because this stuff's not taught. So how would any, I mean, it's not like just growing up in a good family is going to prevent something like this from happening, because it doesn't. You know, so many people, they get caught up in the emotions of love, and they get kind of swept up with all of the different feelings and everything else, and they can fall really deep, or what feels like really deep for this other person, but it's not love, it's those trauma bonds. It's the highs and lows of that. And, you know, in the future, trauma bonds are avoidable if we know what they are. And if we know, and I think, and for a person to really know what they are, you just have to experience it. You know, just telling a person about it isn't, I don't know how protective that would really be, or effective that would really be. So, you know, but once we realize, okay, these are where my boundaries are, these are where my standards and deal breakers are, and we're not engaging with other people from a place of we're, at a minimum, we're aware if we have any of our own vulnerabilities or abandonment issues at play, and we're able to work to resolve them. But like I said, this stuff is not, I mean, you know, this stuff's not discussed. It's not taught. It's not obvious. So much of this stuff is just subconscious. And it almost takes having our life blown apart for us to even be motivated enough to try to seek answers for it, and to figure out, how do I get out of this pain, and how do I, you know, do something different. So those trauma bonds are often, I guess what I'm saying is, those trauma bonds are often not only forged from like the highs and lows of you know, of like a push-pull type relationship, but it's also because they're exploiting that there's unaddressed, oftentimes unaddressed abandonment and insecurities and vulnerabilities within us. And that's why there is that push and pull. Because when a person doesn't have that at play, they leave. And the pain isn't, it's painful. And, they might take some time to really kind of be alone and lick their wounds and do what they need to do to heal. But it doesn't feel, the lows aren't like a suicidal level of low. So oftentimes there's deeper stuff there that's been brought to the surface, which is why it's so incredibly painful. Okay, well, let me scroll up here. Yeah, and Bren says, yeah, don't hang on to someone who hurts you like this. There really are better ladies out there waiting for you to show up in their life. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Sebastian says, I sleep about 4 hours a night maximum for about a month now. It's 4 a.m. now. Oh, I think so many of us can relate to that. That's exhausting. How are you functioning during the day? Are you just kind of coasting through the day? And are you doing anything to try to help you sleep at night? One thing that you can do for anybody really that's struggling with sleeping is there's, what do they call it? It's from the makers of from the makers of NyQuil, not NoDoz. That's the opposite. It's from the people that made NyQuil, and it's some sort of sleep. It's called like Sleep Quill or something like that. And you can get it at any like Walgreens or any of that. It's medication to just kind of cause drowsiness. Benadryl is something else that can help. That's non-habit forming, really. So it's doesn't interact with most medications, and it tends to cause drowsiness, can help with sleep. ZyQuil. Yes, that's it. Yeah, ZyQuil. Yeah, melatonin is another one. Joanna says that she uses that. So yeah, the melatonin can be great for a lot of people. It kind of requires that they take it for a while, so there's kind of a buildup. Yeah, and she also says CBD oil. I've heard a lot of people recommend that as well. So I think oftentimes, I know at least in my own situation, when I couldn't sleep, because I was in the same inability to sleep as well. I just was absolutely sick to my stomach, and I was tossing and turning, and I was so incredibly stressed out. And that went on for about a month. And I was so tired, I just wanted to cry. And I was so stressed out, I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't think of any way to get that to stop. And it wasn't until much later that your brain just, we're not thinking when we're under that much stress, that I realized, oh my gosh, I could have completely taken ZyQuil or, yeah, Benadryl. A Benadryl would, or NyQuil even, would just knock me out. So sleep is so important. And I'm just so sorry that you're struggling with this. That's just, it's just really difficult. And that's another great piece of advice. Undead President says, the best way to sleep is to exercise physically, then your body can rest. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so burning off a lot of that anxious energy can absolutely help. Writing it down, sometimes keeping like a notepad and a pen next to your bed. So if you're finding yourself kind of rehashing these different thoughts, hold on, it's so hard for me to not stand. So if you're finding yourself rehashing the same thoughts over and over again, to write them down and just kind of just get them out of your head can help. Yes. Yep. Truth seeker. So right on. Um, she says people are hard and they're shaming on themselves, but sleeping a lot is helpful to that healing process. Crying and sleep, the brain got burnt. Yes, you bring up such a great point. When we're trying to recover from, I really feel like these relationships, it's kind of akin to like an emotional flu, and that's putting it mildly, right? Because it's oftentimes much more major than that, and it can really be an intense struggle for a person, and just be emotionally devastating. But I guess for the sake of analogy here, it's like an emotional flu, just like if we're experiencing a physical flu. We would allow ourselves, hopefully, to do what we need to do in order to rest and recover. Eating nourishing foods, allowing ourselves to sleep, to take naps, to just take it easy, to not overload ourselves with tasks that we need to do, to realize, yeah, maybe when things are going great in my life, I can just go all day long. But when we're recovering from something like this, sometimes just taking a shower or just going to the grocery store can seem like this monumental task. And to really give ourselves that compassion when we're experiencing this. And, you're not lazy, you're not having a pity party, you're not needing to just get over it. You are recovering. And it can be kind of a slow process, and it can be frustrating at times, but that your body's telling you something, that you need to slow down and take the time to just get some rest and be extra good to yourself. And that it's absolutely, not only is it okay that you do that, it's important that you do that. Sarah asks, is fibromyalgia common after narcissistic abuse? Really, any, stress, extreme stress, which is exactly what narcissistic abuse is, wreaks havoc on our body. And it comes out in so many different ways. So inflammatory disorders is one of them. It's very common, Crohn's, fibromyalgia, lupus, multiple sclerosis, arthritis, all kinds of chronic pain, different types of GI issues, kind of stomach issues, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic headaches, weight gain, weight loss, acne, just all kinds. It just throws a wrench into our whole way of being. So, yeah. Yeah, people are talking about self-care in the chat here, and fibromyalgia. Mr. Mary Lou, I'm not sure what that screen name is. Mary Lou, I don't know. Mary Lou, we'll just go with Mary Lou. It says, 40 years this August, I've been wandering in the wilderness. I woke up 8 months it was the worst thing I never knew. 8 years in autoimmune disease and bone disease. Yes. Yes, it's absolutely wild. I think that's one of the most difficult things about these types of relationships. There's everything across the board is difficult with them, but when we're in that fog of manipulation, it's incredibly confusing and crazy making and enraging and you know mental anguish causing and all of that. And then to add insult to injury after that, when we get out, we're our life is in shambles and we're confused and it's so wild because you think, oh my gosh, how on earth did I get here? How did I not see this as it was happening? That's so common. And there's just so many levels of challenge with this, and then other people, of course, because they weren't living it, are often so quick to think, well, what's wrong with you? And well, why did you stay? Or, they're really kind of lacking empathy and lacking compassion in their approach. And, it's just invalidation city across the board. Yeah, and as off topic here, but Interested says, I also usually indulge during the week before my period because I feel terrible. Yeah, and good for you. Again, this stuff is not normally taught. We kind of have this idea we just gotta, push on through no matter how we feel. And, there's a time and place for that. But if you can, listen to your body and just be good to yourself, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing how much better life is when you're working with your body instead of against it. So, yeah, just kind of knowing what you need and giving yourself compassion and grace. When I'm, during that time of the month, I tend to become very emotional and I crave ice cream, like chocolate, for about 2 days really bad. And you think I would have this figured out by now because I'm 41, right? So it's not like I'm new to this. And every single month, I get so upset with myself for caving in and buying sweets. And I forget that my cravings just go bananas. It's terrible. And I'm tired all the time. And I get kind of grumpy and I actually just put an app on my phone so I can have a freaking reminder so I can break this cycle, because every single month, and then and then a few days later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. Like, that's why I'm a grumpy, chocolate craving, exhausted maniac. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Joanna says, I use gummy bears. Yeah, those are good. My go-to lately has been Sour Patch Kids. I alternate between ice cream and Sour Patch Kids for about 3 days, 2 or 3 days. Good stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah, Jennifer says I get very emotional and sad right before. I think it's PTSD related, but then my period comes. Yeah, I always feel like I don't I lose my memory. I don't remember why I feel this way every single month. I'm always caught off guard by I'll start crying at commercials. I mean, it could be, and in all fairness, they're emotional commercials, like for St. Jude or I don't know, some sort of animal welfare charity or something, but yeah, I cry at the drop of a hat and I always think, what is wrong with me? uh, Truth Seeker says, I love a hearty bowl of vegetable chili and then Oreos. LOL. That's quite the combination. Oh my gosh. And Omaluk says, yes, I have chronic migraines, IBS, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and retinopathy. Also, I have always had low blood pressure and now it's high. Yeah, that sounds about par for the course for just chronic stress, chronic stress in life. Wow, that is quite the list of health challenges there. My goodness, just send in some light and love your way. I'm sorry that you're having to go through all of that. Any one of those is a challenge, but my goodness, all together combined, that takes a lot of strength to get up and keep moving every single day. So you are definitely a warrior if you're going through all of these things. My goodness. Yeah, I would agree to some extent. Zachary is saying narcissists seem highly traumatized to me, but they numb with addictions and validation. Right. Yes. I think somewhere down the line, something, kind of part nature, part nurture, something happened to where they just kind of have a bend in their personality and those certain parts of it. And so certain parts of it just didn't form. And so they're just stuck at this kind of, stage of emotional immaturity. And, what's so sad and so scary and I guess so fascinating about all of this is just how fragile human beings can be. And how, because I think so oftentimes we think about with personality, especially personality disorders or even trauma, that it has to be a certain way, that it has to be something that we would consider traumatic. We hear about something that might have happened to somebody and we think, oh, that's not that big of a deal because it wasn't, X, Y, and Z. Like, for example, when I had the house fire, I was home at the time and the house was full of thick black smoke. You could not see your hand in front of your face and you could not breathe. And describing this to people, some people understood how terrifying that could be and that I was, had I been in the shower, my goodness, had anything been even different by about 10 seconds, I wouldn't be here today. But for a lot of people, they were like, well, but your house didn't burn down. Like they had this idea of what it would, like a traumatic house fire would be like, that it would involve a lot of flames and the whole house burning down and I'm trapped and I'm having to, crawl out a window and this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, actually, billowing black smoke is terrifying enough. And that rattled me enough. But that's the thing with trauma is other people don't get to decide how much something impacts another person. So there was a video I was watching a while back in one of my classes, and it was a guy who had PTSD, and he grew up in a home. I think it was his father. His father was an alcoholic and had pushed his mother down the stairs one night. And it was that event that he just had extreme trauma from. So I think a lot of people think, oh, well, they might be kind of quick to dismiss something like that because he observed it, right? Like he didn't happen to him. It's not like his father pushed him down the stairs, or so often we just think we can be quick to kind of minimize certain things that other people go through. And anyways, the point of that is And it's the same thing with, quote unquote, like a attachment and abandonment kind of things, where we might think, oh, well, this person, their parents divorced, or this isn't a big deal because it's normal, or this isn't, um, um, or even still, I was working with somebody, and she had chronic anxiety and chronic, basically feeling like low self-esteem and all kinds of challenges with attaching to other people. And her parents were married, marriage was decent, but her mother had an anxiety disorder and was, chronically anxious, and was just not able to comfort her when she needed her. Her mom would panic and then freak out and then leave. Like, she would just leave the room. And so this young woman is still struggling with these feelings of abandonment. So, it's amazing how certain events like that can really shape a person, where it might not even be impactful at all to somebody else. It can radically shape them. I guess what I'm saying is, I think so oftentimes we're looking for some major, major trauma. Were they involved in, some sort of sex cult, or was there these extreme events? And sometimes don't get me wrong, that kind of stuff is still problematic and still extreme, but it's not as extreme as we often think. Like, oh, they would need to live through, the Holocaust, or they would need to, a genocide of some kind, or something major, in order to have like this much of a damaged personality. And sometimes it's, no, actually, they're this one parent they didn't connect with, or it was a comment at school. I think I was telling you guys, there was a video I was watching the other day about a girl who had developed anorexia and struggled with it for a really long time, like close to 10 years, I think. And it all kicked off because a boy that she had liked had made a comment about her weight. That was it. Like, there was no anything that was chronic and ongoing. It was like that one comment just planted that seed, and it just sprouted within her. So yeah, I guess to circle around with the narcissists, it's, there's just something within them that's unable, for whatever reason, they just don't have that emotional reserve, or that healthy sense of self enough to allow there to be enough room for anybody else. Everything is perceived as a threat. It's got to be all about me, because if it's not, then I'm not safe. That's kind of the mentality. Or if I attach to you, then that makes me vulnerable, and that's not safe. So they don't attach. Now, granted, this is not conscious thinking on their end. Like, that's the thing. That's like when defenses, we all have our defense mechanisms, and we're oftentimes, I think it takes quite a bit of insight and introspection to be able to even realize when certain defenses have kicked up. Just like for a lot of us, while narcissists tend to be more locked into that fight defense, so many of us tend to be locked more into that friend or freeze defense, generally that friend defense, where we become overly ingratiating and go to great lengths to try to keep a relationship going. And we might not realize it. So it takes us a long time. Rashida, welcome, says, hi, this is my first time getting to join the live chat. So happy to be here and to connect with other narcissist survivors. Well, we are glad to have you. So welcome. Gareth says, yes, I've talking about random stuff in the chat. He says, yes, I've heard horror stories about insurance in the USA. It makes me so angry. Oh yeah, it's a total It's a problem over here. I wish we could get it figured out. There's so many things I really love about the United States. I feel like there's so much raw potential here and things that we need to get figured out. And I wish we could kind of look around and see what other countries are doing right. And they've already got it figured out. Like they've got hundreds of years of experience underneath their belt, while we're still new comparatively. Oh, well, thank you, Melissa. She says, Dana, I've been following you for years. I love your channel and your support group. You help make the insanity of it all finally make sense. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I can help in some way, shape, or form, and that the group is beneficial for you. The group has really been growing lately, and that's that's another thing I need to kind of figure out what we're doing. Is kind of this tipping point with there's so many people in it, and it trying to make sure that it's still a decent group, and is just keeping up with it all, I guess is what I'm saying, is definitely challenging. Oh, and real quick, that people had said earlier that the first donation was, they thought it was from Marie. So if that is the case, Marie, thank you so much for the live stream donation. And I apologize for not acknowledging it sooner. I get to yammering on like I do, and then things are gone. So let's see. So KM says, how do you heal when you are clueless that your spouse was living a double life and you found out after his unexpected death? The smear campaign, flying monkeys, and betrayals I wasn't even aware of. I'm just in a daily fog. Well, I think to start, it's completely understandable and normal and appropriate to have a wide mix of emotions like that, and to feel completely overwhelmed and caught off guard, and to feel like you're in a daily fog, because that's a lot to try to wrap your mind around. And it's going to take a little while to even really begin to wrap your mind around all of that. I wasn't married to the person that I dated two different people that had double lives, but one, I would say, well, Jack, that one, I guess, really, I don't know. They were each really messed up in their own way, but I just really did not see that. I guess that was my first real experience with something like that. I just really did not see it coming and was absolutely shocked. And we were together for about 2 years. So I can only imagine being married and then finding out after an unexpected death. What an absolute emotional roller coaster. And, to try to just get your bearings with after something like that. I don't know if you're into journaling, but getting all of those thoughts out can really be helpful. Just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, and not trying to, judge the different thoughts that you have or edit them. Just allowing yourself to experience that wide range of emotions. Because I think that's another big challenge with things like this, especially, my goodness, right? If you had gone from thinking that you were reasonably happily married to finding out, oh my gosh, this person, who was I married to? And then that's such a wide chasm that you're having to jump emotionally, so And there's going to be a lot of feelings that surface about that, and a lot of those feelings that might feel really confusing, and it might feel really angering, and it's going to take a while. So I think, to answer your question, it's a lot of it's just working through those feelings and allowing yourself to feel them when they surface. I think it was Pete Walker who had talked about, what was that book? The Tao of Fully Feeling was his book. He talked about processing feelings, and he used a really great analogy. He was saying something along the lines of, whenever we have some sort of massive pain like that, it can feel like all of a sudden we wake up and we're in the middle of the ocean and it's night and everything is dark and we're scared and we're wet and we're alone and we don't know how we got here. And then the waves start up, and the waves are big and they're scary and they push us under. And it takes us a little while to realize, okay, this is how I need to tread water. This is how we just start navigating this new territory, basically. And then over time, those waves, we learn to ride these waves. The waves aren't so big. Daytime does come. There does come a time where we can start to see these waves coming, and so we can prepare for them. And I think eventually, really at a much later stage in healing, we can even see these waves and then to kind of take a surfboard and ride them to shore. But yes, it absolutely takes time. Yeah, Gigi says, yeah, the yoga really helped me to get quiet and work through my body and the stillness. Yeah, yoga is so powerful for that. Yeah, and Gigi was saying, hold on, let me scroll up here. And she said, his life was a lie. Our relationship was a lie. My entire adult life and who I believed myself to be was a lie. Wow, that's really powerfully said. How have you, I guess, because you've been out for years, and I know you're still really weathering the storm and all of this, but what have been some of the things that have helped you with that? To kind of reclaim a sense of self and to, I guess, do you have any advice, or is there anything that you could share for other people that are struggling with that? Gigi mentions the website and the resource. It's called One Mom's Battle. Is a great resource for divorcing with children. Gigi says that she's still in this mess. Melissa says, what do you do when the current narcissist in your life is your brother? I have to work with him in our family business. He abused me my entire childhood, and I never thought I would have to work with him. Well, I guess, I think it kind of goes back to kind of knowing what you have control over and knowing what you don't have control over, and what you need in order to have peace in your life. So that's a difficult spot because you've got very intertwined with family stuff there. Um, you know, I guess I would try to arrange things in such a way that you have as limited amount of contact as possible. And if that's not possible, then I would consider leaving the family business. Which of course are probably going to go over like a lead balloon. So, you know, you'd have to you'd have to prepare for that emotionally and have some sort of plan. But, you know, nothing is worth having peace in your life. Yeah. And Zachary says, yep, manage your expectations and have very strong boundaries. So I just wanted to elaborate on that because I think for some people that can be twisted. Let's talk about that phrase and then we'll talk about another phrase. So help me remember. Angie and I were talking about it yesterday. The phrase that we're not responsible for somebody else's feelings. And I've always kind of had a trouble with that. And I couldn't quite articulate why. But actually, we'll just start with that one since I'm talking about it. You know, we're not responsible for somebody else's feelings. I was like, boy, I could really see how that could get twisted in a way where to kind of excuse, you know, brutally honest, unnecessary, you know, just bad behavior, just hurtful bad behavior or verbal abuse of any kind. And I was I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought, you know, I think there's a difference here between being mindful of somebody's feelings and then actually being responsible for them. And being mindful of somebody's feelings is when we use tact in our approach to them. And so we're aware of, you know, we're aware of how we say things. We're aware of, you know, any obvious, I think, or known to us vulnerabilities or insecurities. We're mindful of them and of their feelings. Being responsible for them is more so like if we're already mindful when we're drawing a boundary with somebody, then at that point, and we do it in a tactful way, at that point, all we can do is just let it go, because we can't be responsible for how they receive our boundary or our communication. You know, they might feel hurt, they might feel violated, they might feel angry or what have you, but we can't control how they feel. Only we're not responsible for that. We're only responsible for drawing our boundaries with others in tactful ways. So that was kind of a tangent there. The manage your expectations is another one. So you know, and I'm sure when Zachary's talking about managing your expectations, it's not that we need to settle for bad behavior. It's basically that we need to quit being surprised by it. Because I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, you need to manage your expectations, they interpret that through thinking, oh, then that means my expectations are too high. So I need to reduce my expectations in order to make this situation tolerable. And so really that line of thinking, it's just it's a few steps left of center. And so kind of just bringing it back and realizing, okay, no, your expectations for their behavior is most likely healthy and reasonable. But if their behavior has never been healthy and reasonable, you're going to continue to find yourself frustrated and irritated because of that divide between expectations and reality. So managing your expectations is seeing and interacting with their behavior based on what it is and not expecting it to be any different. He says, yes, that's it. Yeah, I had a feeling you were right there. Zachary just is full of so much information and wisdom. Just really enjoy your contribution to the channel. Glad you're here. Let's see here. Let me. That's a good. Mm, yeah, Gigi says, "Yep, I am not responsible for your feelings. The NPD uses this to minimize my concerns and shut down facts. It's his psychobabble way of ignoring my concerns or factual statements." Yeah, that's the challenge of all of this. When it's all about context, and boy, oh boy, can we, if a person's got really kind of dysfunctional thinking or really skewed, imbalanced, we'll say imbalance. If they really have a kind of this imbalanced thinking, either they're too much of an overtaker or they're too much of an overgiver, they're only going to see everything that they come across, every message, everything, every piece of scripture that they read, every book that they read, every therapy session they attend, they're going to interpret that through their worldview, through that imbalance. And that's one of the many, many, many challenges to kind of correcting that thinking, correcting that imbalance, and finding a healthier, functional level of normal. Because we can't even within our own selves, it's really difficult to comprehend all of the different skewed ways that we can misinterpret seemingly, innocuous advice like that. We take it in a skewed way. So, I mean, my goodness, my whole book, that Out of the Fog book, it's all about that. And a lot of it was just so many lessons, because again, this stuff's not taught. So many lessons learned the hard way, because if everything is not filtered through that context of healthy boundaries, then, and healthy self-esteem, and like just the healthy ability to be self-protective, which it all plays into healthy boundaries and healthy self-esteem, then who knows how a person's gonna, this kind of stuff can be twisted and skewed, and of course they're gonna have their own argument for it, because that's what we all do, and that's why it can be so convincing, because we're starting to take on this kind of distorted view of reality as our own, because whatever they're saying might have some kernels of truth in it, or it might just make some degree of sense, and so we think, well, I guess that sounds true enough. And maybe, it can just be so easy to think, oh, maybe it is me. Maybe I am being overly sensitive, especially with platitudes like that. I'm not responsible for your feelings. We might hear certain phrases like that being thrown around. And so then when somebody else says something like that, or they say, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way. And if we're being told in certain contexts that that's reasonable and appropriate, but then we're hearing the exact same phrases from somebody who's using it to manipulate and abuse, it's really confusing to figure out, okay, well then what's going on here, and who has the problem, and am I overly sensitive, and all of that. Yeah. And hey, Lydia is absolutely right on. She says, you cannot have a rational conversation with an irrational person. Yep, absolutely. Just drop the mic on that one, because that's it. That's exactly what it is. Maya says, I don't know if I am a codependent or an empath. Well, I think there's oftentimes a lot of overlap between the two, and people can be both. I think more often than not, the kind of traits of an empath tend to, they kind of are, I don't know, some of it is supposedly, nature, and some of it's supposedly nurture. I think some people are just born more sensitive to certain things, kind of like a highly sensitive person tends to be, just more sensitive to their environment. But with empaths, I think more, I would just bet more often than not, it tends to come from when a person grows up in a home where they're continually walking on eggshells, that they learn to highly tune in to other people's emotions. It's just a way of staying safe. It's a self-protective, it's a like a sense that, we develop, just like if a person doesn't have another sense, I don't know, like if a person doesn't have their sight, then their hearing might be greatly enhanced. It's just our other senses can overcompensate in certain ways. And so as a, just as a way to basically help us navigate our environment and keep us safe. And so I think it's that way, but it's emotionally. So with empaths, and there's different, people can have these like highly empathetic traits in a wide variety of ways. Some people might only have it in one way. Some people might have it in a variety of ways. So, for example, some people are really in tune with animals. Some people are really in tune with plants. Some people are really in tune with the pain of other people, to a problematic degree, but they might not know what's going on. I still struggle with this, where it's ridiculous. Like I could watch a TV commercial for a person, like a NyQuil commercial, and a person's miserable and they have a stuffy head and all that. And I have to really be cognizant to not take that on, because next thing I know, I start feeling sick. It's ridiculous. And when I was a nurse and worked in the med surg units and more of like the medical units at first, and it's everybody's got some sort, they're recovering from some sort of issue. I felt all of that. If a person has a broken arm, I would go in there and I would leave with my arm hurting. It was just, but I'd always been like that my whole life, and so it didn't dawn on me. And I'd also been struggling with depression and chronic fatigue my whole life, but I think that was why. It's because I was absorbing stuff around other people's stuff. Life is hard enough when it's just our own stuff. So, whereas codependent people oftentimes are also highly in tune with their environment, they tend to be more driven by guilt. They may or may not necessarily be able to really truly take on another person's pain as their own, or kind of feel like they're really connecting to this other person and this other person's challenges. I think the kind of the common denominator with both codependency and empath stuff is it's blurred boundaries. And so, let's see, some other traits of codependency. Actually, I don't know where I'd put that. Hold on. I just printed out a handout today on that. Let me see if I can find it. And I'll just read some. Okay, here we go. So some signs of codependency include seeking validation, looking for another person to complete you, going with the flow or people pleasing in order to get other people to stay, having difficulty making decisions in a relationship, generally out of fear that you'll make the wrong decision, and or looking to others to make the decisions for you, having trouble identifying your feelings or taking on the feelings of others around you, not having a solid sense of self and having your mood, happiness, and identity defined by the other person. So that's a big one, the not having a solid sense of self. So, and what that means is having your mood, happiness, and identity defined by the other person. So, for example, if you are, I guess, giving other people the power to let them talk you out of how you're feeling. If you're hurt or you're sad, and they're telling you that, oh, you're being overly sensitive, or there's nothing to be sad about, that kind of thing, and then thinking, boy, you know what, they're right. I shouldn't be sad about this. I mean, there's children starving in Africa, kind of a thing. So we're minimizing our own pain and invalidating that, and um, and then pushing aside our own feelings. Or, we have an issue with our partner's behavior. They say it's not a problem. They convince us, or we let them convince us that it's not a problem, even though deep down it's a problem for us. But we just don't feel like we're entitled or justified in having an issue with them. That kind of stuff. So it's taking on another person's reality as our own, which leads to that mental anguish and stress and perpetual confusion and anxiety and depression and all kinds of things. Having difficulty being assertive in a relationship out of fear that the other person will get upset or leave. And I should add to that also having consequences for boundaries. So a person could feel like they are assertive in a relationship, like we were talking about earlier. Oh yeah, my goodness, we keep having the same conversation over and over and over again. And, I keep telling him he's got to quit drinking, and, or she's got to quit drinking. I just can't handle this anymore. And the yelling and the screaming, and, I'm not going to put up with that. And here I'm being assertive and I'm holding my ground, but there's no consequence to it. So it's not really a boundary. It's just kind of us screaming into the wind. Whereas a person that has a healthier sense of self realizes, even though it might be difficult, they need to have peace in their life. So they're not going to stay in a situation and just get dragged through hell. Like if it means that they have to leave, then it means that they have to leave. Valuing the approval of others more than valuing yourself, especially in terms of dating, where it's more of a focus on being chosen versus being choosy. So thinking, oh boy, that person, they're so handsome, they're so funny, they're so this, they're so that. I really hope they like me. And hoping that they choose us instead of thinking, is this person a good fit for me in my life? And using that as the criteria, or staying with a person out of guilt or pity because they think that you're this amazing person and the best thing that's ever happened to them, but that they're not a good fit for your life. They don't even have to be abusive. Like they could be a really wonderful person, but staying with them because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or because you feel sorry for them, or you feel guilty, or what have you. Thinking that being nice and going to great lengths for others will keep the relationship going. Trying to earn someone's friendship or a partner's loyalty or honesty by being continually helpful and understanding. Thinking that eventually they will come around and see that you are worthy of their love, affection, loyalty, or respect. This is a significant one, being drawn to relationships and friendships where you are needed or otherwise unequal to the point where you feel like a therapist, caregiver, or teacher. So this dynamic is definitely within relationships, and what we were talking about earlier, how this is a way that, so many of us subconsciously seek out this imbalance in relationships. Oftentimes, I think because we over-identify with other people's pain. And so a person is in a tough spot in life and we think, oh boy, they need me. I'll be there. If they need me to loan money, time, energy, even if I don't have it, I'll give it. Not realizing that that's an imbalance, and that relationship is not, that's the breeding ground for resentment and frustration and hurt feelings, especially if that person then becomes more stabilized and then they leave. And then we think, well, wait a minute, I thought we were friends. I mean, look at all I've done, right? Like I should have earned your friendship by now. I gave you a place to stay and I loaned you money and all this, and now you don't even talk to me anymore. And we're hurt by that. But that's that thinking of, if I do enough nice things, kind of what I put out into the world, I'll get back. But thinking, oh, what I'm putting out into the world is kindness and compassion. And so then we continually feel shortchanged when we're not getting that kindness and compassion back. But what we're really putting out is this imbalance of, this is not a situation of mutuality. And that's exactly what we're getting back. Having fears of abandonment or an obsessive need for approval. Confusing being needed with being loved or appreciated. Feeling uncomfortable, this is a big one too, feeling uncomfortable in dynamics that are equal or where you aren't needed. So if a person, because then it's more real, it's we can't earn somebody's friendship or somebody's love, right? So we're not relating to people based off of their pain or off of their need. We're relating to them based off of who we are, which can be really scary, because then we think, well, gosh, especially if we have low self-esteem, like, well, there's nothing really special about me. So if that's the case, then they could just up and leave at any time. And that's why we tend to prefer that imbalance more of, I'll just continue to be there for them because I'm paying them with this kind of like social currency of my niceness in order to get them to stay. It's really wild when you start thinking about how, the mental gymnastics that was going on in our head that we didn't even realize. Feeling a compulsive need to help others, especially if this comes at the expense of your safety or sanity. Being drawn to help or stay with people who need you, use, abuse, and or exploit you. Continually trying to change or fix other people, which often includes giving unwanted advice, and often to other people who don't sincerely want to change or who don't ask for advice or help. So those are some signs. Let me get back to the chat here. Yeah, True Seeker says, a lot of our patterns come from childhood programs. Yes. And a lot of it's the way that we just perceived things as a child. I think that's what's so bizarre and fascinating about all of this is, even if the childhood programs, even if a person grew up in a loving, healthy, well-adjusted home, odds are, because this, like, I know I keep saying this, but because this stuff is not truly taught in a way that I think explains the bigger picture, it's just so easy for a person to just inadvertently get off track. So they can have really great childhood programs, but then they can get, knocked off base by somebody at school or somebody at church or somebody, the neighbor, or, anybody that has the thinking that's not within the context of healthy boundaries. It has the potential to pull them off base, a friend, anybody. So yeah, it's really scary when you start realizing just, how much of a tightrope, when we're not grounded within ourselves, and when we're turning to other people for that validation and to let them define how we think and how we feel, and we wake up to that, and it's absolutely terrifying. It just feels like I have been, walking a tightrope my whole life, and one false step and things could have been even worse than they are today. And that's just absolutely terrifying to to think about that, because we just weren't adequately prepared for the real world. And Gigi says, I was the eldest and my father was an active alcoholic. My mother overcompensated for it. I'm not codependent, but was overly responsible, a perfectionist, shy, and felt defective. Yeah. And that's another, perfect storm of traits for a person to stay with, all the wrong people and wrong situations. The overly responsible thing, those people that are more that way tend to be like, I'll handle it. And they get very good at putting on a strong face, and they're overly independent and they struggle with asking for help. They struggle not only with asking for help, but even identifying that they need help. And they're oftentimes the person that a lot of other people tend to lean on because they do come across as so strong. But I would venture to guess that a lot of people that are overly responsible also have a lot of anxiety and are probably struggling with depression, because they tend to not allow themselves to feel their emotions, because those emotions get in the way of being overly responsible. So it's just sort of, we're telling ourselves, oh, you just got to buck up and continue on, kind of a thing. And the traits of, being a perfectionist, that's, and that's always an incredibly difficult way to live. And then the feeling defective, that can lead us to seek validation from other people. And it can also contribute to us settling for crumbs, thinking, well, I guess this is as good as it's going to get, because there's things about me that are just, profoundly broken and unlovable. And because I am so defective, I just need to realize that this is it. This is it for me. This is as good as it gets. Yeah. She says, I really struggled with this, not feeling pretty enough, not smart enough, until I did my self-affirming work. Yeah. You've really come a long, long way. I know I know you still have your struggles with all of this, but I'm continually amazed and impressed by the level of insight that you have with all of this. And I mean, yeah, just the inner work that you've been able to do, going through something like that, where you've got a partner where, like you were saying, your whole adult life was one giant manipulation by this other person. That's just absolutely got to rock you to your core. And for you to be able to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep going, and you're just coming through this as so insightful and so empowered and just so wise. It's true. It's just inspirational to see that. And I hope that you can see that too. Yes, that's a great point, David. He says, you can feel assertive in a relationship, but after it ends, when you look back, you realize that you never really made the decisions, that you compromised every time. That is really well said. Yeah. It's so wild how that stuff can just fly under the radar, isn't it? And how not only can it fly under the radar, but how it can be misinterpreted as, oh, commitment takes work, right? Or relationships take work, or relationships are all about compromise, but not, again, it's missing that context. It's missing that context of healthy boundaries and healthy standards, to know, like, well, how much compromise, and what is, where's the range with that? Like, when does compromise become problematic? Let's see. EB says, I felt that every fight was going to be the last. She was always leaving. LOL. Yeah, and that's a really difficult and anxiety-inducing way to live. And that kind of goes back to, it's just so freaking hot in here. I'm so sorry, you guys. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier about emotionally safe people. Emotionally safe people, you're able, because conflict and confrontation will happen when you have two people that are being themselves, right? Because they're going to have their own, oops, okay. They're going to have their own wants and needs and thoughts and opinions about things. And that's completely fine, right? That's normal and appropriate. It's how we're able to kind of negotiate all of that with the other person. So each person's getting all of these things met in a, healthy, constructive way. And, but when we're with an emotionally unsafe person, any conflict or confrontation, there's always this big question mark over, well, what does this mean now? Are they going to up and leave? And that even if a person had a relatively secure attachment style, that's anxiety inducing. When somebody's, they're continually threatening to fire you, or to, not be friends with you, or to divorce you, or, what have you. That's not cool. It's manipulative. It's holding a person emotionally hostage. And unfortunately, too, when a person's in a relationship like that, that kind of stuff, that insecurity tends to stay with them. And they carry that through with them, from relationship to relationship to relationship. Especially if they have a very similar dynamic with the next person or the next person. And then that kind of stuff just tends to grow and grow. But that, that insecurity can be terrifying. And so for a person who hasn't lived through something like that, that has a more healthier style of communication, they might not see what the big deal is, because they know, like, hey, we're having a disagreement. This doesn't need to be, World War III. We're just having a disagreement, and we don't need to argue about it. We don't need to get ugly about it. We don't need to be hurtful about it. We just disagree on this, and we can resolve it. But for a person who's been on the receiving end of this, of basically either you do everything I want or I'm going to leave, any disagreement causes massive insecurity. And that is to be when you tend to see that push and pull from other people. It's the I love you, don't leave me kind of a thing. Yeah, David says, yeah, I thought that compromise was what a relationship was all about, that it was all about putting yourself last. Many people in my life made me feel that what I was doing made me a quote unquote good person. Yes, this stuff, it's well-intended. It's what I call well-intended bad advice. And it's, it sounds good, in theory, like, oh, that's a really compassionate thing to do, to put other people first, right? But now we know, okay, that's not going to work. I wish we could get rid of that as a society, of thinking that way, that's what it means to be compassionate, to put everybody else first and to put yourself last, because that's not what compassion is about. And that's what martyring is about, but that's the problem with being a martyr, right? Like, you die for your cause. And then what? But there's a lot of these messages, you know, for men kind of get sold the white knight narrative of, oh, this is what it means to be a good man, to be, you know, it's the whole thing, you know, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy kind of a thing. And so it's continually compromising. It's not even compromising, it's continually giving in. It's putting yourself last and your partner first, these kinds of things. And there's, whenever that imbalance is there, you know, it's just, it's a slow poison in any dynamic. And, you know, unfortunately, if a person's not actually living it, then they're not seeing just how damaging that can be. And so I hope that now you can see, you know, true compassion is when you're taking another person into consideration, but you're also taking yourself into consideration, because you matter just as much as anybody else. And so when you make yourself a priority, then everything else falls in line, because then, you know, it's hard to give from a well that's dry, you know, so you're doing things to nourish yourself in whatever ways that you need to do that, so that you can nourish other people. It's sort of like you know, what they say on the airplane, you know, if there's trouble coming and the oxygen masks drop down, you put yours on first and then you attach the one to the person next to you. Because if you don't, then you run the risk of, because we can hear something like that and we think, oh my gosh, I could never do that. You know, what if there's a child sitting next to me, or an elderly adult, or somebody that really needs help? I need to be there to help them. Well, then what we're ending up doing is, if we don't secure ourselves first, now there's two victims, because the odds of us passing out, or, you know, things getting bad for us really quick, we can't help them unless we can help ourselves first. It's so it's just everything. Yeah, and Jennifer's saying, oh, I hate that whole, if my wife isn't happy, nobody's happy thing. Yeah, I agree. You know, and again, I think it's one of those uh, things that people say that they joke about, but it's, you know, it kind of sets the tone for a big time imbalance. And I think there's uh, a lot of women that, because that's kind of passed around as, well, this is just how, this is the expectation, this is how it is, that, uh, you know, it, it doesn't, it creates monsters, is what it does. So, you know, whenever somebody's thinking that they should just get their way all of the time, well, boy, you know, that's just not a way to have a happy, healthy relationship. So let's see here. Yeah, Zachary is saying, yep, white knight syndrome. Yep. And Tina says, nope, that is doormat syndrome. Yeah. And the doormat are people that let it, yeah, it's kind of, I guess, one of the same. White knight is the perpetual rescuing, you know, and the doormat is the, uh, you can just treat me however you want to treat me kind of a thing. I think probably oftentimes they tend to go hand in hand. Okay, so let me address this one question and then we'll go into our meditation and call it a night. Jamie says, why, after breaking away from toxic people, is it so hard to make friends? I just want a couple of people I can chill with and be myself around. Well, I guess I would encourage you to examine how these different dynamics keep going off track, if there's a pattern there that you're aware of. I know for many of us, myself included, it tends to be after a toxic situation or relationship that we tend to talk about it a lot, and we tend to relate to other people kind of based on that. And so it can take a little while to shift into relating to people in different ways, hobbies and interests and friends and kind of everything that's good and right with our life. That's just kind of the nature of trauma. When something painful happens, it just gets all of our attention, and it just holds all of our attention until we're able to process it through. So that's, that could be part of it. Yeah, Joanne was saying, she says, I know a lot of women who quote unquote wear the pants, and they treat their husbands terribly, in my opinion. But it feeds into this notion. Yeah, I agree. It's so sad to see abuse of any kind in play, but especially when it's more kind of socially acceptable, which it tends to be when women are abusive to men. It's heartbreaking. I had a friend of mine, her mother was horrifically abusive, didn't even make an effort to really hide it. And she was horrible to her husband, my friend's father. And he ended up getting cancer. And she just was such a cold, calloused, cruel woman. And so this man develops cancer, and she had told him basically that it was an inconvenience for her and that she wasn't going to be taking care of him and that she wished he was dead. And he ended up, that just absolutely devastated him. And he ended up going through his treatment in like a nursing home type facility and ended up dying there. And she hardly, I don't even know if she ever really came to see him. Just the cruel lack, just indifference, is just jaw dropping. And that man, and they too were of a generation where you just really didn't divorce. And, they had a couple kids together, and he just went through so much with her. Yeah, that's another thing I've seen too, Joanna, which is awful. She says, women that order their husbands around, speaking at them instead of asking for things or being kind. They say stuff like, I can treat him however I want, he'll never leave, or he loves me. Yep. Yep. I've seen, there's all kinds of stuff out there that needs to really be addressed. What I found with a lot of women is a lot of this stuff, if it's mentioned, I think with people that are, I should preface this, that are reasonably, that are team oriented and solutions oriented, and they want to have a happy, healthy relationship. When some of this stuff is brought to their attention, they're absolutely horrified. They just didn't see it in an imbalanced way at all, because it had just been what the messages that they had always known. And then they're pretty quick to realize, oh, actually, yeah, we need to have more balance. And I just never saw it that way. I just, kind of a thing. Truth seeker, that's another great point. Well, I'm sorry, we'll do the meditation here in just a second. Truth seeker makes the comment, I always see a dominant and a submissive in every relationship. I never see interdependent. Yeah, it's difficult to truly find relationships where there is that interdependence. And I think it really requires, it's not a fluke when you do see it. I think when we see a relationship that is true interdependence so if people are confused, there's You have kind of these codependent relationships. You have independent, person who's codependent, right? So there's this complete merge of a sense of self with another person. And then you have more independent, which tends to be the opposite. So like you're not functioning as a couple at all. You're each living like your own life. And then there's interdependent, where there's, maybe like a, I'll say 35, 40%, 40 or so percent overlap, maybe even 45% overlap, where you're sharing, maybe even 50, like you're sharing a life, you're sharing a life with another person, but you still have that other half of your life that's yours, your hobbies, your friends, your wants, your needs, your thoughts, your opinions, all of that. And so you have two whole people coming together to form a fully formed relationship. I think, unfortunately, again, because this stuff's not taught, so many of us, we go through life attracted to another person. We're more acting out of our dysfunction than we are our function, because our dysfunction is where we're trying to get our needs met. And unfortunately, a lot of those needs are, things that we need to meet ourselves. Like, we need to get this resolved. And looking for another person to meet them isn't going to work. It's just going to fuel that fire. So if we have unaddressed abandonment issues, if we have unprocessed trauma, we're looking to another person to make us feel safe. That's not going to work. Their level of safety is only going to go so far. It's the same thing with the flip side of that. It's the same thing with abusers, where a person starts becoming really controlling, and they think, well, I don't want her or him to cheat on me, so I need them to get a tattoo of my name on them, or I need them to not dress a certain way, or to not wear makeup, or to not work, or to not do all of these different things. But it's never enough, because the other person can't do enough, because it's that issues within them. So yeah, having that truly interdependent relationship requires, empathy and emotional intelligence and ongoing introspection and really solid communication on a very regular basis about things, to make sure that there's that sense of mutuality present. And because this stuff is it can be so difficult and awkward and uncomfortable to be assertive and to even be in tune with our wants and needs enough to be able to talk to somebody about them. And it takes time to kind of build up that emotional safety and that trust with that other person, to feel comfortable saying, to know that they're not going to make fun of us or threaten to leave us, or that we're going to be able to actually have an adult conversation, a mature conversation about things, without it just going from 0 to 10, and a lot of it's each person doing their own, what we would call the inner child work, and resolving a lot of that stuff. So then that way there's not this continual activation and triggering of the other person, or of each other, I should say. You've got two adults acting from a healthy adult place, instead of two wounded children lashing out or looking to be healed or rescued. Yeah. Omaluk says, I think only a tiny minority of couples have that. I would agree. Absolutely. And I think that the couples that do have that are the ones that have gone through some major stuff. My guess is there's probably been some sort of family or personal history of, people don't tend to just stumble into self-help stuff for no reason. If they're in some sort of they're confused, or they're in some sort of pain that they're trying to figure out. So I think a lot of people that have that insight, I guess is what I'm saying, that insight that people develop is often very hard won. And it comes from trying to recover from like an alcoholic parent, and then getting into maybe, Al-Anon or Coda or something like that. And that kind of is the gateway, right? Like that's the entry point. And then they start really getting into exploring all of this and connecting the dots, and they're hearing experiences from other people, and fully realize, starting to see like the bigger picture of how all these different pieces are connected. But people don't just arrive fully formed at that point. I just think it's impossible. There's so much dysfunction in society. There's just no way that a person would navigate all of that, 100%. And all it takes is one false step to, land in the mud. So, okay. So with that said, okay, real quick. That's a good comment. Where is it? Local tourist said, somebody had told me that we keep repeating childhood trauma until we understand it. Yes, because really if we're still acting out of that same imbalance, if we're still acting from that place of that wounded child where we're afraid of rejection, we feel unloved, we feel unlovable, we feel we don't want people to leave us, then we're bringing that with us in every single dynamic with other people, unknowingly, of course, but we're going to continue to repeat those patterns until we're aware of it, until we can start working towards correcting that imbalance. So, we repeat, especially, if we're interacting with people based out of that imbalance instead of based out of what's healthy. And especially if that imbalance is something that feels comfortable, because that's what we've been doing for a long time. So yeah, it's interesting stuff, how all of this works. Okay, so with that said, I guess let's take some time. We'll do our guided meditation, and then we will call it a night, and then I will see you guys next week. So if you are interested in joining us, take some time to find a comfortable spot, whether that means sitting down or lying down. And just allowing yourself the next 5 or 10 minutes to relax. Kind of settle in, close your eyes. Take some deep breaths. Deep inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Allowing yourself to be fully present in this moment. Realizing that there is a lot that is good and right about this moment, and that there is a lot that is good and right about you. And taking some time to just acknowledge that you truly are that 1%. You're in that 1%. There's not that many people out there that are interested in personal growth, and you guys are seeking it out. You're chatting with each other, you're learning and you're growing, and it's just such an inspiring, cool thing to see all of the different ways that you guys have grown and changed, and the insights that you have, and the questions that you have, and the ways that you think about things is just so cool and impressive and uh, needed. It's just a thing of beauty to see people from all over the world be able to come together and to share in this and to share in their growth. So I hope that you guys can see that that you're very special, that this is a special thing for you to be a part of, trying to unwind all of this stuff and to find your authentic self. And it's not an easy journey, but it's absolutely worth it. My heart goes out to every single person here that's been through, we tend to show up to places like this when we are in a lot of pain. My heart goes out to anybody that's suffering tonight. And just please know that you're not alone in that. And that many of your best days are still ahead of you, and that you can rebuild your life. And that there is so much that you can squeeze out of all of this pain and time, and you can make it work for your highest and greatest good. You absolutely can. And so this isn't the end, this is just a beginning. So please know that. And it's an exciting beginning because it's a journey to discovering you, your authentic self, under all of this. So let's take some time. We'll keep doing our breathing. Slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth. Allowing your body to grow heavy with each passing breath. Allowing your muscles to relax. Allowing any tension or stress that you might be holding, just feel like it's evaporating, like steam, easily and effortlessly being released from your body. And now, as you continue your breathing, perhaps visualize some healing energy. Maybe it's like a white light, maybe it's silver. Allowing it to fill up your lungs with each inhale. And pushing out or carrying out all of any of the residual negativity, stress, anxiety. Just easily and effortlessly. And just breathing in with the good, that restorative, nourishing, healing energy. And allowing it to carry away all of the pain. And feeling that energy as it makes its way, that healing energy as it makes its way past your lungs, into your different organs, all throughout your body, into every single cell in your body. Visualizing that light, that silver or that white light. Again, just so beautiful, just easily and effortlessly spreading throughout your body, down your legs, down into your toes, down your arms, into your fingers, up your back, up your neck, and up your head, kind of radiating throughout your body, several inches past your skin, feeling that white healing light or that silver healing light, kind of creating a nice, amazing, comforting glow around you. Visualizing all of the different cells in your body with little smiley faces all over them. And they just get so nourished. And they're just cute, little fat, round, happy cells with little smiley faces on them. And just so full of all of this amazing healing energy that you're bringing into your life. That they're going to be able to go move their way through your body and restore all of the parts and pieces that need to be restored. And so when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you for all of your questions and for supporting each other in all of this. And I hope to see you guys next week. We do this every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, so have a wonderful night as always. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and just sending lots of light and love your way. Okay, good night.